In the grand tapestry of global resources, few prizes are as coveted as oil and gas. These hydrocarbons, buried deep beneath the Earth's surface, are the lifeblood of modern economies, fueling industries, powering cities, and shaping international politics. But a fundamental question arises before the first drill bit ever touches the ground. Who truly owns this immense subterranean wealth? In most parts of the world, from the sprawling deserts of the Middle East to the deep offshore waters of West Africa, the answer is clear and unequivocal. The state, representing the collective will and ownership of its people, holds the ultimate title to the resources that lie beneath the soil. This principle of national sovereignty over natural resources is a cornerstone of the modern international system, a stark contrast to the rule of capture that defines ownership in places like the United States, where the surface landowner often owns what lies directly below. This concept of state ownership is not merely a legal formality. It is the very foundation upon which the global energy industry is built. A farmer in the Niger Delta may own the land where yams grow, but he does not own the multi-billion-dollar oil field that might be discovered thousands of feet beneath his farm. This distinction is critical. It transforms the quest for oil and gas from a private transaction between individuals into a high-stakes negotiation between powerful multinational corporations and sovereign nations. Companies with their vast capital, advanced technology, and specialized expertise are indispensable for the complex and risky task of finding and extracting these resources. They possess the tools, but they do not possess the right to use them without explicit permission from the true owner, the nation itself. Therefore, any company wishing to explore for or produce oil and gas must first approach the government and secure a legal right to do so. This process is not a simple purchase. It is the granting of a privilege, a carefully negotiated agreement that allows the company to operate on behalf of the state. The government acts as a custodian, tasked with managing its national endowment for the benefit of its citizens, both present and future. It must weigh the potential economic windfalls, revenues, jobs, and development against the environmental risks and the need to ensure that the nation receives a fair share of the value extracted from its own territory. This dynamic sets the stage for a complex relationship, one defined by contracts, regulations, and a constant balancing of interests. The journey from untouched geological formation to a producing oil field is thus paved with legal and commercial frameworks. No company, no matter how large or influential, can simply stake a claim. It must enter into a formal relationship with the host country, a relationship governed by a specific type of contract or license. This initial step is the gateway to the entire enterprise. It determines who takes the financial risks, who manages the operations, and most importantly, how the immense profits generated from this hidden treasure will be divided. The nature of this agreement shapes the entire trajectory of a nation's oil industry, influencing its economic development and its place on the world energy map for decades to come. It is the essential first chapter in the epic story of turning rock and fluid into national fortune. Nations have developed several distinct models for granting access to their oil and gas reserves, each reflecting a different balance of risk, control, and reward. The oldest and simplest form is the concession or license system. Under this model, the government grants a company the exclusive right to explore and produce oil in a specific area for a set period. The company bears all the financial and operational risks. If it finds oil, it owns the oil it produces. But in return, it must pay the government a combination of royalties, a percentage of the value of production, and taxes on its profits. This system, historically prevalent and still used in countries like the United Kingdom and Norway, offers administrative simplicity, but can sometimes leave host nations feeling that they are not getting their maximum share when oil prices soar unexpectedly. A more common model today, especially in developing nations, is the production sharing contract, or PSC. Pioneered in Indonesia and widely adopted, including for many years in Nigeria, the PSC changes the ownership dynamic. Under a PSC, the state retains legal ownership of the oil. The company again bears all the risk and funds the exploration and development. If the venture is successful, the company is first allowed to recover its investment costs from a portion of the oil produced, known as cost oil. The remaining profit oil is then split between the government and the company according to a pre-agreed formula. This model gives the government greater control and a direct share of the physical barrels, which can be politically and economically advantageous. Beyond these two primary models, other variations exist to suit specific circumstances. A risk service contract, for instance, is a more recent innovation. Here, the oil company acts more like a high-tech contractor. It finances and conducts all the work, but it never owns the oil. Instead, if it is successful, the government repays the company's costs and adds a fee, which can be linked to production levels or profits. This model, used in countries like Iran and parts of Iraq, allows the state to retain maximum control and ownership of the resource, hiring the company purely for its capital and technical services. It is a way for nations to leverage international expertise while keeping the core asset firmly in national hands. Finally, some countries utilize joint ventures with international oil companies. In a typical JV, a state-owned national oil company partners with one or more foreign firms. Both parties contribute to the investment costs according to their equity share in the venture, and they similarly share in the production and profits. Nigeria has historically relied heavily on JVs with major oil companies for its onshore and shallow water operations. This model allows the national oil company to build its own operational capacity and gain direct experience, but it also requires the government to contribute its share of the funding, which can be a significant burden on the national budget, especially when large capital investments are needed. For decades, Nigeria's oil and gas sector operated under a patchwork of older laws, creating uncertainty for investors and challenges for government oversight. The landscape, however, was dramatically reshaped with the passage of the Petroleum Industry Act in 2021. This landmark legislation was designed to overhaul the entire governance structure of the industry, creating a more transparent, efficient, and investor-friendly environment. One of its most significant impacts was on the very process of how oil and gas rights are granted and managed. The Petroleum Industry Act introduced new types of licenses and leases, clarifying the rules of engagement for companies wanting to tap into Africa's largest oil reserves. It aimed to replace ambiguity with a clear, modern framework built for the 21st century energy market. Under the Act, the authority to grant these crucial rights is clearly defined. The Minister of Petroleum Resources holds the power to award petroleum exploration licenses, which grant the right to explore for oil, and petroleum prospecting licenses for exploration and appraisal. Following a commercial discovery, the holder of a petroleum prospecting license can apply for a petroleum mining lease, which authorizes full-scale production. This structured, multi-stage process ensures that companies demonstrate progress and meet specific milestones before being allowed to move to the lucrative production phase. It is a system designed to encourage active and efficient development of the nation's resources, rather than allowing companies to sit on valuable acreage without working it. The Petroleum Industry Act also created new regulatory bodies to ensure these rules are followed. The Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission is now the primary regulator for all upstream activities. The Commission is responsible for monitoring operations, enforcing technical and commercial regulations, and ensuring that companies adhere to the terms of their licenses and leases. It manages the licensing rounds where blocks are offered to companies for bidding and oversees the entire life cycle of a project, from the initial seismic surveys to the final decommissioning of a field. This separation of regulatory functions from the policy-making role of the minister is a key governance reform intended to reduce political interference and increase professional oversight. Furthermore, the Petroleum Industry Act fundamentally altered the contractual terms available, moving away from the old, often convoluted agreements. It established a new standardized framework for production sharing contracts, joint ventures, and other contract types. The fiscal terms, the collection of royalties, taxes, and fees that determine the government's take, were completely redesigned to be more progressive and responsive to oil price fluctuations and investment levels. For example, royalties are now tied to production levels, with lower rates for deepwater projects to incentivize investment in those challenging environments. This new blueprint provides clarity on everything from cost recovery limits to the mandatory contributions companies must make to host community development funds, setting a new and clear path for all players. The agreements that grant oil and gas rights are far more than simple permissions. They are complex legal and economic documents that define the relationship between a company and a nation for decades. Within their clauses lie the detailed rules of the game. A central component is the fiscal system, which dictates how the value is shared. This includes the royalty, a fixed percentage of production paid directly to the government. It also includes various taxes, such as a hydrocarbon tax or corporate income tax, levied on the company's profits. These agreements often specify limits on what costs the company can deduct before calculating its taxable profit, a critical detail that prevents the erosion of the government's revenue base. This architecture is designed to ensure the state gets a fair return for its non-renewable resource. Beyond the core fiscal terms, these contracts contain a host of other critical obligations. A signature bonus is often required, a large upfront payment made by the company simply for the right to sign the contract. The agreement will also detail a mandatory work commitment, obligating the company to perform a specific amount of work, such as drilling a certain number of wells or acquiring seismic data within a set time frame. This prevents companies from holding licenses speculatively without investing in exploration. Another key clause involves relinquishment, which requires companies to give back portions of their licensed area over time if they are not actively exploring them, allowing the government to offer that acreage to other interested parties. Crucially, modern agreements place a strong emphasis on what is known as local content. These provisions mandate that the operating company must prioritize the use of local goods, services, and labor. The goal is to ensure that the oil industry acts as a catalyst for broader economic development, creating jobs for citizens and building a domestic supply chain that can serve the sector. Similarly, state participation is a common feature, where the national oil company has the right to take an equity stake in the venture, becoming a partner alongside the international firm. This allows the nation to share more directly in the risks and rewards of the project, while also building its own institutional capacity and technical knowledge. Ultimately, the strength and clarity of these agreements are paramount for both the host country and the operating company. For the nation, a well-structured contract ensures a stable and predictable flow of revenue, protects the environment, and promotes local economic development. It provides the framework for turning a natural resource into tangible benefits for its people, like schools, hospitals, and infrastructure. For the company, a clear and stable contract provides the security of tenure and fiscal certainty needed to justify making massive, long-term investments in a high-risk industry. In the complex dance between nations and corporations, these agreements are the indispensable choreography that allows both partners to move forward, unlocking immense value from deep within the earth.